Undress me now, or I'll do it myself, the lonesome widow ordered the rancher. Clara sat quietly in the back of the small, rattling stagecoach, watching the endless stretch of dusty road wind through the barren Texas plains. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the horizon with streaks of orange and gold. The landscape was beautiful, but it also made her feel small and fragile, as if she were just a tiny figure in a vast, untamed world. She had grown up in a busy city surrounded by noise, people, and the constant hum of life. The silence of the open plains was almost unbearable, yet there was a strange allure to it, something raw and untouched. This was her inheritance now, the ranch her late husband had left behind. She was supposed to feel pride, but all she felt was a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. When she first received the letter about the ranch, she had hesitated for weeks before making a decision. She had visited the property only once before, shortly after her husband's funeral, and even then she hadn't stayed long enough to understand the scale of what she was stepping into. Now, sitting in the rattling coach, Clara felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like a physical force. She was alone in this. Her husband had managed the ranch for years, and though he had often spoken of it with pride, he had never prepared her for the reality of taking over. She wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she wasn't cut out for this kind of life. The coach slowed as it approached the entrance to the ranch. A wooden gate, weathered and splintered, swung slightly in the wind. Beyond it, the main house stood like a sentinel, a sturdy but humble structure surrounded by fenced pastures and corrals. The land stretched out in every direction, dotted with patches of dry grass, rugged hills, and a few scattered trees that offered the only shade for miles. Clara's heart pounded as the coach rolled to a stop. She had imagined this moment countless times, but reality had a way of making even the most familiar visions feel strange. As she stepped down from the coach, the dry wind brushed her hair across her face. She adjusted her hat and took a deep breath, trying to summon courage she didn't feel. She noticed a figure approaching from the main house. A tall man with a rugged, weathered face, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and worn boots, strode toward her. His posture was straight, and every step he took seemed deliberate, measured, like a man who had spent his life outdoors and knew how to command space without raising his voice. Clara had a fleeting thought that he might be intimidating, but she quickly pushed it aside. Pfft. She had to assert herself. This was her ranch now. "Are you Clara?" the man asked, his voice low and steady. There was a hint of curiosity in his tone, but also caution. "Yes," she replied, straightening her shoulders. "I'm Clara. Clara Whitman." "I inherited the ranch from my husband?" She realized her voice sounded more uncertain than she intended. He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, as if assessing her for some hidden truth. "I'm Tom. I manage the ranch. I've been here a long time." "You'll need help getting settled." Clara swallowed hard. "Yes, I'll need..." She didn't admit that she had no idea how much help she would truly need. Tom raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. Bats. Instead, he motioned toward the house. "Come on."
"Let's get you inside. It's hot out here, and you probably have questions."
As they walked across the yard, Clara tried to take in everything at once. The corral held a few horses, their tails swishing lazily. Chickens clucked near a small coop, and the faint smell of hay mixed with dust and livestock filled the air. The ranch was alive, but in a way that was completely different from anything Clara had known. In the city, life was orderly, fast, and predictable. Here, it followed its own rhythms, dictated by the land, the animals, and the weather. She realized quickly that the ranch would not bend to her wishes. She would have to bend to it. Inside the main house, the air was cooler and the wooden floors creaked under her feet. The interior was simple, functional, and filled with signs of long-term labor.
A leather chair with worn edges, a table marked with scratches, and shelves lined with tools and supplies.
It lacked the elegance of her city home, but there was warmth here, a sense that this place had been lived in and cared for. Tom handed her a glass of water, and she drank it eagerly, grateful for the relief. Breaths. He watched her quietly, as if waiting for her to gather her thoughts.
I don't know where to start, Clara admitted finally.
There's so much to do, and I've never managed a ranch before. Tom nodded. That's why I'm here. I'll show you the ropes. But I won't sugarcoat it. It's hard work. Long days, unpredictable weather, animals that don't always cooperate. If you're serious about running this place, you'll need patience, strength, and a willingness to get your hands dirty. Clara felt a mix of fear and determination. She had come this far. She couldn't turn back now. I
want to learn, she said firmly. I want to do what's needed. Tom's expression softened just slightly, though his eyes remained sharp.
Good. That's the first step. Rannis, you'll need to watch, listen, and ask questions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They'll happen. But you also need to be decisive when the moment calls for it.
As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the ranch, Clara followed Tom outside again.
They walked to the stables, where horses waited patiently. Tom introduced her to each of them, explaining their temperaments, their routines, and their quirks. Clara tried to memorize every detail, feeling a sense of awe at the bond between Tom and the animals. She realized that running a ranch was more than just work. It was about understanding and respecting life in all its forms. Later, as they repaired a fence that had been damaged by a recent storm, Clara struggled with the heavy posts and thick ropes. Tom worked beside her, offering guidance without taking over. He showed her the correct way to tie knots and how to secure posts firmly in the ground. He corrected her with patience, though his presence reminded her that she was under constant scrutiny. By the time the task was done, Clara was exhausted, her arms sore and her clothes covered in dirt and sweat, but there was also a spark of pride in her chest. She had accomplished something real today, something tangible. She had faced the physical challenges of the ranch and had not faltered completely. Tom nodded approvingly. Not bad for your first day. You'll be sore tomorrow, but you'll get stronger. You'll learn fast if you keep this up. Clara managed a small smile, feeling a flicker of confidence. Maybe she could do this after all. She was alone, yes, but she wasn't powerless. She had the land, the animals, and now Tom's guidance. Step by step, she could find her place here. As night fell, the ranch settled into a quiet rhythm. The wind rustled through the trees, and the animals slept peacefully in their pens. But Clara stood by the porch, looking out at the darkened fields. The stars shone brightly, scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of calm. She was far from the city, far from the life she had known, but maybe this was where she needed to be. Maybe this was the start of something new. Something that would help her heal, grow, and find her strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and more hard work. But tonight, Clara allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She had arrived. She had stepped into a world she barely understood, and she had survived the first day. That was enough for now. In the distance, the ranch lay peaceful under the stars, and Clara felt a small, stubborn spark of hope. Breath. She wasn't just the widow who had inherited a property. She was becoming the woman who could run it. And though the road ahead would be difficult, she knew one thing for certain. She would not back down. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, casting a golden light on the pastures and corrals.
Clara woke early, feeling the soreness in her arms and shoulders from the previous day. Her body reminded her that ranch life was nothing like the quiet, controlled life she had known in the city.
But despite the aches, there was an energy in her chest, a mix of nervousness, excitement, and determination. Today, she decided, she would push herself further. She wouldn't be a bystander. She would learn, adapt, and prove that she belonged here. After a quick breakfast of eggs and coffee, Tom appeared in the doorway. His face, though calm, held that same sharpness she had noticed yesterday. There was no warmth in his greeting, but there was respect. He did not coddle her, and Clara appreciated that. "Ready for your first full day?" he asked. Clara nodded, brushing her hair back from her face. "I'm ready." Tom led her to the barn, where a row of horses waited in their stalls. He picked one out, a brown mare with a white stripe down her nose, and began explaining its habits. Clara listened intently, but as soon as she tried to help, she realized how little she knew. The horse shied at her first attempt to brush it, and she stumbled, dropping the brush with a clatter. Tom's brow furrowed, but he didn't scold her. "Breaths. Take your time," he said. "Animals can feel your fear. You need confidence, even if you don't feel it yet." Clara swallowed her embarrassment and tried again. Slowly, cautiously, she approached the mare, her hands steadying as she brushed along its neck. The horse relaxed slightly under her touch, and Clara felt a small surge of pride. She was learning, and that small progress meant everything. But the day wasn't just about animals. Tom insisted she help with other chores, and soon she was hauling feed sacks, mending fences, and cleaning out the barn. Each task left her muscles burning, her hands raw from work she had never done before. Clara's frustration grew, not with Tom, but with herself. She had imagined ranch life as something romantic, maybe even peaceful. She hadn't imagined the relentless physical strain, the constant attention needed for every part of the property, the way the wind and sun could sap energy as quickly as any storm.
Tom watched her silently as she struggled with a fence post, his arms crossed.
"You're trying too hard all at once," he said finally. "Take it one step at a time. Plan before you act. You'll save energy and avoid mistakes."
Clara huffed, wiping sweat from her forehead. "I just want to get it done," she admitted.
"I know," Tom replied evenly. "But rushing leads to errors. You'll learn that eventually." His tone irritated her more than she wanted to admit. Clara was used to managing things herself, making decisions quickly and efficiently. Here she felt her independence challenged in a way that was unfamiliar. But as she looked at Tom, she realized that his way wasn't meant to belittle her. It was meant to teach, and that thought, though frustrating, planted a seed of respect. Later in the morning, they moved on to the livestock pens. Cattle roamed the fields beyond, lowing softly, while sheep huddled near the fence. Tom handed Clara a bucket and instructed her to help herd the animals for feeding. She followed his directions, but her inexperience became clear as the animals scattered in different directions, spooked by her tentative movements. Tom moved quickly to correct the situation, guiding her hands, adjusting her stance, and redirecting the animals. "See," he said as they finally managed the herd. "It's all about reading them, not forcing them.
They react to what you feel.
Day, calm and steady winds. Clara's face flushed. Breath. She had tried so hard, and yet she had failed. But she nodded, understanding the lesson.
This wasn't about her proving herself. It was about learning to adapt. Slowly, she began to feel a rhythm to the work, a flow that matched the land itself. Despite the growing respect she had for Tom's skills, Clara's stubborn streak refused to yield completely. She wanted to assert herself, to show that she could manage as well as he could. When Tom suggested a new method for tying a gate securely, she shook her head.
I think we should do it this way, she said, demonstrating a technique she had read about.
But Tom's eyes narrowed slightly. But he didn't dismiss her immediately. He watched her work, and to her surprise, her method was effective, though different from his. For the first time, Clara saw a flicker of approval in his expression. Not bad, he said. It works. Different, but it works. I can respect that. Clara's chest swelled with pride. It was a small victory, but it mattered.
She realized that asserting herself didn't mean ignoring Tom's experience. It meant showing initiative and thinking critically.
She was beginning to understand that leadership on a ranch wasn't just about strength or knowledge. It was about confidence, creativity, and problem-solving. As the day wore on, they encountered a minor crisis. One of the water troughs had sprung a leak, and the cattle were gathering around it anxiously. Clara panicked for a moment, unsure how to fix it quickly. Tom acted swiftly, showing her how to patch the leak temporarily and redirect the water supply. Clara assisted, following his instructions carefully, and together they restored calm to the herd. After the crisis passed, Tom leaned against the fence, catching his breath. Clara stood beside him, her arms covered in scratches from brambles, and her clothes damp with sweat. You handled that well, he said quietly.
You didn't freeze. You didn't run. You followed directions and helped. Clara felt a warm sense of accomplishment.
Frowned in desperate. She had faced fear and uncertainty and had come through. She realized that ranch life was teaching her more than just practical skills. It was teaching her patience, resilience, and the value of teamwork. By late afternoon, Clara was exhausted but exhilarated. She and Tom sat on the porch steps, drinking water and watching the sunset. The sky was a brilliant mix of pink and orange, the silhouettes of the hills stretching across the horizon. The ranch was alive with sound, the distant lowing of cattle, the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, the occasional call of a bird returning to its nest.
You did good today,
Tom said after a moment of silence. Thank you, Clara replied softly. I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know I had it in me. Tom gave her a small nod. It takes time. You'll make mistakes, you'll get frustrated, but you'll get stronger. You're learning faster than most who come here without experience. But Clara's eyes met his, and she felt a flicker of understanding pass between them. There was respect there now. Mutual, cautious, but real. They were still different in so many ways, but for the first time she felt that they could work together rather than against each other. As night fell and the stars appeared, Clara walked to the edge of the ranch, taking in the vast darkness illuminated by countless points of light. The wind carried a chill, and she pulled her jacket tighter around herself.
She thought of her life before the ranch, the city, the quiet apartment, the endless routines. None of that mattered here anymore.
This land demanded focus, energy, and courage, and somehow she felt ready to meet that challenge. Her first full day had taught her more than she expected. She had faced physical strain, learned the importance of patience, and began to navigate the tricky balance between asserting herself and listening to those with experience. She also realized that her stubbornness, once a source of frustration, could be a strength if channeled correctly. Clara returned to the house for a simple dinner, her body sore but her mind buzzing with thoughts. More tomorrow would bring more challenges, more lessons, and probably more clashes with Tom. But she no longer feared those clashes. Instead, she looked forward to them as opportunities to learn, to grow, and to prove to herself that she could handle this life. Before going to bed, she sat by the window, looking out at the ranch bathed in moonlight.
The night was quiet, except for the occasional rustle of animals moving in the fields. Clara felt a sense of connection she had never experienced before.
This land, harsh and demanding as it was, had begun to feel like home. And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, Clara understood something vital. She wasn't just surviving here, but she was learning, adapting, and slowly discovering the strength she never knew she had. Breath. The day had started like any other, with the sun rising over the open fields and the animals moving about their routines. Clara woke with a sense of anticipation mixed with unease. The weather had been unusually dark and humid, and the wind had begun to pick up in the early morning. Tom noticed the change as soon as he stepped outside. He narrowed his eyes, scanning the sky. "Storm coming," he said quietly to Clara, who was helping gather eggs in the chicken coop. Desperate clouds, now thick and gray, rolling across the horizon in an ominous wave. "How bad do you think it will be?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady.
Could be strong, Tom said. We need to secure everything. Livestock, fences, equipment. And you'll need to stay focused. Nothing can be left to chance.
Clara nodded, a flutter of anxiety in her chest.
The ranch was already physically demanding, but the thought of a storm approaching made it feel unpredictable, even dangerous.
Breaths. She grabbed a few supplies, ropes, tarps, and feed, and followed Tom across the yard. The wind had grown stronger by the time they reached the horse stables. The mare Clara had learned to handle the day before shifted nervously in her stall, ears flicking back. Clara approached her calmly, taking a deep breath. She had learned from Tom's guidance that animals could sense fear, and now she had to convince them, and herself, that she was steady. She stroked the horse's neck, whispering softly as she helped move it to a safer, enclosed area. Tom moved efficiently, checking fences, securing loose equipment, and organizing the ranch hands. Clara followed his instructions carefully, tying down tarps over hay bales and adjusting gates to keep livestock contained. The wind buffeted her from all sides, whipping dust and small debris against her skin. Despite the storm, Clara refused to let fear take over. She focused on the work, each task grounding her, each successful action giving her confidence. By mid-morning, the storm had begun in earnest. Rain fell in sheets, heavy and relentless, turning the dirt paths to mud. The sky grew dark, and thunder rolled across the hills in deep, powerful waves. Lightning flashed, illuminating the fields for a brief, blinding moment. Clara could feel her heart racing, but she steadied herself, remembering Tom's words about patience and calm. "Clara!" Tom shouted over the roar of the wind, pointing toward a corral where the cattle were becoming agitated. A few had broken through a weak fence, stampeding in panic. Clara's stomach tightened, but she didn't hesitate. She ran toward the animals, her boots slipping in the mud, shouting instructions she had learned from Tom. Tom was already there, guiding the herd, positioning himself to redirect the frightened animals. Clara moved beside him, helping to block the path and calm the cattle. Together they worked quickly, anticipating each movement, communicating through sharp gestures and brief calls. Clara realized that everything she had learned over the past days, the patience, the observation, the physical stamina, was being tested all at once. The storm intensified, rain soaking them to the bone. Lightning struck nearby, startling the herd and sending a wave of panic through the animals. But caught herself on a fence post, her heart pounding. She could feel fear creeping in, a raw, primal fear that made her want to give up. But she looked at Tom, his face set in concentration, and she remembered something important. She was not alone. They were a team. Hours seemed to pass in a blur as they worked tirelessly. The wind ripped through the ranch, bending trees and tearing loose tarps. The animals began to settle only after careful guidance, and slowly the chaos lessened. Clara's muscles screamed in protest, her hands raw from gripping ropes and fences, but she refused to stop. Every step, every action was a small victory. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the worst of the storm passed. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and the wind softened to a steady breeze. Clara and Tom stood together, surveying the ranch. The ground was muddy, fences were damaged in places, and a few of the animals were shaken, but nothing had been lost. Tom turned to Clara, his face smeared with mud and rain.
You did well, he said, his voice quiet but firm.
I don't think you realize how well. Clara shook her head, exhausted.
I was scared, she admitted. I didn't think I could handle it.
Tom gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Desperation.
That's not weakness.
What matters is how you respond.
You stayed calm when it counted.
You acted. You didn't freeze.
Breath. Clara felt a flush of pride mixed with relief. She had faced one of the most intense challenges she had ever experienced and had not failed. Bert. She realized that ranch life was not just about hard work. It was about courage, quick thinking, and endurance. And she had proven to herself that she could handle it. As the sun broke through the clouds, painting the wet fields in shimmering light, Clara felt a shift inside her. The storm had been terrifying, yes, but it had also shown her something important. She could face fear and come out stronger. She had learned to trust her instincts, to act decisively, and to rely on others when necessary. Tom clapped a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. You're stronger than you think, he said.
You've got the grit for this. Don't forget it.
Clara nodded, feeling a deep sense of respect for him. Not just for his skill, but for his ability to remain calm under pressure, to guide her without controlling her completely. But she realized that leadership on the ranch wasn't about dominance. It was about support, patience, and teaching others to find their strength.
By late afternoon, the ranch hands had repaired fences and checked on every animal.
Clara helped wherever she could, her movements slow but steady, her mind absorbing lessons with each action. She had learned that the ranch demanded total attention, but it also rewarded those who gave it fully. When night fell, the storm long gone, Clara stood on the porch dripping wet and exhausted, watching the stars appear in the clear sky. The air smelled fresh, washed clean by the rain, and the ranch was alive with the sounds of animals settling down. Breath. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, a knowledge that she had faced something far greater than herself and had survived. Tom joined her, offering a flask of water. Brasp. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant calls of livestock. The storm had tested them, pushed them to the edge, but it had also shown the value of trust and cooperation. Desk. Clara felt a connection to Tom that went beyond words, a shared understanding born of hard work, fear, and triumph.
You handled yourself well today, Tom said after a long pause.
I didn't expect you to keep your head so steady. You've got guts, Clara. Clara smiled faintly, feeling warmth in her chest despite the chill from the storm. I couldn't have done it without your guidance, she admitted. I learned more today than I ever imagined I could in a single day. Tom nodded, a small smile touching his lips. We'll keep learning together. Ranch life has a way of teaching everyone lessons sooner or later. Every challenge, every storm, every moment of struggle was a lesson in resilience, patience, and courage. And she knew there would be many more storms ahead, both literal and figurative. But she also knew that she was no longer afraid. She had faced the raw power of nature and survived. She had proven to herself that she could endure. As she finally went inside the house to dry off and rest, Clara felt a quiet sense of triumph. The storm had tested her limits, but it had also revealed her strength. She was learning not just to manage the ranch, but to navigate the unpredictable twists of life itself. And for the first time since her husband's passing, she felt a sense of hope that she could not only survive in this new world, but thrive. The night passed quietly, with the ranch settling into a calm rhythm after the chaos.
Clara lay in bed, her body aching but her spirit stronger. She thought of the day's events, of the fear she had felt, and of the courage she had discovered within herself.
She realized that every day at the ranch would be a challenge, but she was ready to meet them head-on. She had faced the storm, and she had not broken. Tomorrow would bring new tasks, new lessons, and new opportunities to grow, and Clara knew deep in her heart that she was ready for whatever came next. She was no longer just a widow arriving at a ranch. She was a part of it, and it was becoming a part of her. The morning after the storm, the ranch was calm but marked by the previous day's chaos. Mud clung to the fields, fences needed repair, and the animals were restless, still adjusting to the changes in their routine. Clara stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air, feeling a mix of exhaustion and renewed determination. The storm had tested her in ways she had never imagined, and now she knew that ranch life would demand both strength and intelligence. But for the first time, she felt she could meet the challenge. Tom met her at the barn, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp. "You're up early," he said, noting the determination in her stance. "I want to get a head start," Clara replied. "We still have a lot to fix, and I want to make sure everything is secure." Tom nodded approvingly but silently. He was a man of action, not words, and Clara had learned to read the respect in his gestures rather than his speech. Together, they walked across the yard, surveying the damage. Several fence posts had been loosened by the storm, and one of the water troughs had sprung a small leak. The horses and cattle had returned to their pens, but they seemed uneasy, their routine disrupted. "Let's divide the tasks," Tom said. "You take the east pasture and the barn. I'll check the west side and the corrals." Clara hesitated for a moment. Her instinct was to follow him, to watch and learn. But then she realized that today she needed to step forward, to lead.
"I can handle it," she said. "I'll get the east pasture and the barn ready." Tom's eyes flickered with surprise, but he did not argue.
"Press." He nodded once. "Good. Show me what you can do." Clara took a deep breath and walked toward the east pasture. The first task was mending the broken fences. She remembered Tom's lessons about patience, observation, and technique. Her hands moved carefully, securing each post, checking knots, and making sure every connection was strong. She worked steadily, focusing on the task, and noticed the small changes that improved her efficiency. It was difficult work, but it gave her a sense of purpose she had never felt in the city. While she worked, the ranch hands began to notice her presence. They were used to following Tom's instructions, and a new leader, even if inexperienced, was unusual. At first, some of them exchanged skeptical glances. Could this city woman really handle the ranch? But as they watched Clara move among the animals, secure the fences, and handle minor crises with calm determination, they began to respect her effort. She wasn't just standing by or giving orders. She was working alongside them. One of the ranch hands, a young man named Jesse, approached her while she adjusted a fence gate.
"You're doing fine," he said, admiration clear in his voice.
Most people wouldn't last an hour out here after a storm like yesterday. Clara smiled, wiping sweat from her brow.
Thanks.
It's hard work, but I'm learning.
Jesse nodded.
Despot, you've got grit. I can see it. Clara felt a small surge of pride. Recognition from someone who truly understood the ranch meant more than she could have imagined. It wasn't about praise or flattery. It was about proving that she could rise to the challenges of this harsh, demanding life. By mid-morning, Clara had secured the east pasture and tended to the horses in the barn. She checked their feed, cleaned stalls, and ensured the water supply was steady. She felt stronger, more capable, and even more confident in her ability to lead. Her hands were sore, and her clothes were covered in dirt, but the sense of accomplishment was worth every ache. Tom returned just as Clara finished checking the barn. He surveyed her work silently, his expression still reserved but thoughtful.
The east pasture is secure, he said finally. The fences are solid and the animals look calmer.
You handled it well.
Clara felt a thrill of satisfaction.
This was the first time she had truly led a section of the ranch independently, and Tom's approval meant a great deal. "Thank you," she said quietly.
I tried to follow your methods, but also think through the problems myself. That's exactly what you need to do, Tom replied. Thinking ahead, planning your moves, and handling challenges as they come. That's leadership.
You're learning faster than I expected. Clara smiled, a quiet, determined smile. She realized that leadership was more than giving orders or asserting authority. It was about observation, problem-solving, and patience. She also learned that, leading by example, by working hard alongside those she was responsible for, earned more respect than any command could. Throughout the afternoon, Clara continued to take on responsibilities. She oversaw feeding schedules, coordinated with the ranch hands to repair minor damage, and checked on the well-being of the animals. Each decision she made, each action she took, reinforced her confidence. First, she was no longer just a novice learning the ropes. She was becoming someone others could trust to manage the ranch. Tom observed her from a distance, occasionally offering advice or corrections, but largely allowing her to make decisions independently. He recognized that she had developed a sense of initiative, and that her willingness to take responsibility would make her a strong leader. Clara had moved from uncertainty to capability, from hesitation to action, and Tom's respect for her had grown accordingly. By late afternoon, the work on the ranch was nearly complete. The fences were repaired, the animals were calm, and the property had begun to recover from the storm. Clara stood on the porch, watching the golden light of the setting sun reflect off the fields. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, a knowledge that her hard work had made a tangible difference. The ranch hands gathered around, some offering casual nods or brief words of praise. Clara realized that she had earned their trust and respect not through authority, but through effort, resilience, and a willingness to learn.
She felt connected to them in a way she had never expected. Part of a team that relied on cooperation and shared responsibility. Tom approached her, his expression serious but approving.
"You've come a long way in a few days," he said. "You've shown strength, patience, and the ability to think for yourself. That's rare. Most people would crumble under pressure." Clara felt a warm sense of pride. "Still have a lot to learn," she admitted. "But I feel like I'm starting to understand what it takes. That's the spirit, Tom replied. You've earned your place here, not just because you inherited the ranch, but because you've proven that you can run it, Brad. Clara's heart lifted. She had feared that her lack of experience and physical strength would make her inadequate. But now she realized that her determination, resilience, and ability to learn were just as valuable as any skill she might acquire. The ranch was not just land and livestock. It was a test of character, and she had passed. But as evening approached, Clara walked through the fields one last time, checking on the animals and the repairs. The air was filled with the scent of wet earth, fresh grass, and the lingering freshness of the storm. Thus, she felt a quiet sense of peace, knowing that she had faced challenges head-on and come out stronger. When she returned to the house, Tom was already there, preparing a simple dinner. Dan. He handed her a plate, and they ate in silence for a few moments, enjoying the calm after the day's hard work. The unspoken understanding between them had grown stronger. They were no longer just teacher and student, or employer and owner. They were partners, bound by shared effort, mutual respect, and a growing sense of trust. Later, Clara sat by the window, watching the stars appear in the night sky. She thought of the journey she had begun just a few days ago, arriving at the ranch unsure and hesitant, and now standing as a capable, confident woman who had earned respect through her actions. She realized that leadership was not about being in charge. It was about responsibility, perseverance, and empathy. She had come to the ranch seeking a new start, a way to heal from loss and to find her place in the world. Now, she felt that she was beginning to understand not just the work of the ranch, but the lessons it had to teach her about courage, strength, and self-belief. She knew that the days ahead would bring more challenges, but she also knew that she was ready. Clara had grown. She had faced fear, physical strain, and uncertainty. Breaths. She had learned to lead, to make decisions, and to earn the respect of those around her. And most importantly, she had discovered a sense of confidence and purpose that she had not known before. As she finally went to bed that night, her body tired but her spirit strong, Clara felt a sense of accomplishment that went deeper than any physical achievement. She had not only survived the challenges of the ranch, she had risen to meet them, proving to herself and others that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The ranch was no longer just a place she inherited. It was a world she was becoming a part of, a life she was learning to lead, and a home where she could finally discover her strength. And as she drifted off to sleep, she felt a quiet but unshakable certainty. She was ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Clara woke with a sense of purpose that she hadn't felt when she first arrived at the ranch. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting golden light on the fields and pastures. But she could hear the soft sounds of the animals beginning their day, horses nickering, cattle lowing, and chickens scratching for food. This was no longer overwhelming to her. It was comforting. Breath. The ranch was alive, and she had become a part of it. After a quick breakfast, Clara stepped outside, feeling the cool morning air on her face. She walked through the yard, checking on the animals and observing the condition of the fences and fields. Everything she saw reminded her of how far she had come. She had learned to work alongside the ranch hands, to anticipate the needs of the animals, and to make decisions that kept the ranch running smoothly. She was no longer uncertain or timid. She was confident, capable, and in control. Tom appeared at the edge of the barn, watching her with that same careful, observant expression he always wore.
"Morning, Clara,"
he said.
Brett.
"Morning," she replied, smiling. "Everything looks in order."
The animals are calm, and the pastures seem fine after the rain. Tom nodded, impressed. You've taken charge as well. The ranch has never been in better hands, even if it's just your first week. Clara felt a surge of pride, but she kept her focus. She knew the ranch was a living entity. It required constant attention and care. She didn't want to celebrate too soon. Instead, she walked toward the stables, checking the horses and making sure the feed and water were in place. She adjusted the gates, noting small repairs that would prevent future problems. Every task she completed felt purposeful, like another step toward mastering this life. The ranch hands gathered near the barn, some nodding or waving as they saw her approach. Clara had earned their respect, not through inherited authority, but through action. She worked alongside them, giving instructions when needed, helping when necessary, and encouraging when someone struggled. She realized that leadership wasn't about being the boss. It was about inspiring others, guiding them, and showing through example how things could be done. By mid-morning, a new challenge appeared. One of the water troughs in the far pasture had sprung a leak again. Clara grabbed a bucket and a few tools, walking through the wet grass toward the trough. She knew exactly what to do. She had learned the proper way to patch it from Tom, and she also trusted her instincts to make adjustments as needed. The repair went smoothly, and soon the animals were drinking calmly once more. Tom approached as she finished, a small smile on his face. "You handled that perfectly. You didn't just fix the problem, you thought ahead, making sure it wouldn't happen again." Clara felt a quiet satisfaction. Every day, every task, every decision she made reinforced her confidence. She was no longer a newcomer learning by trial and error. She was a leader, capable of running the ranch efficiently and effectively. As the day went on, Clara moved from task to task, checking the animals, inspecting fences, and coordinating with the ranch hands on repairs and chores. She felt a sense of rhythm in her work, a connection to the land and its demands that she had never experienced in her previous life. The challenges were still there, but they no longer intimidated her. Instead, they motivated her to grow stronger, think more clearly, and act more decisively. In the late afternoon, Tom called Clara to help organize a small project, rebuilding a section of fencing that had been damaged in the last storm. This time, Clara took full charge. She directed the ranch hands efficiently, showing them exactly how to secure the posts, tie the knots, and check the alignment. She explained her decisions clearly, demonstrating both her knowledge and her confidence. The ranch hands worked with her willingly, trusting her guidance, and the project progressed smoothly. Tom watched from a distance, his hands resting on his hips, clearly impressed. He had taught her many things, but he also knew that leadership required initiative, judgment, and the ability to inspire others. Clara had demonstrated all of these qualities. He approached her once the work was complete.
"You've done exceptionally well," he said. "You've taken command without being overbearing, and you've earned the trust of everyone here."
"That's not easy to do, and you've done it naturally." Clara felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond physical accomplishment. This was the moment she realized she truly belonged on the ranch. She had transformed from a hesitant newcomer into a capable, confident ranch owner. She could handle challenges, make decisions, and guide others, all while maintaining respect and balance. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink, orange, and purple, Clara walked through the pastures one last time for the day. She stopped at a hill overlooking the ranch, taking in the expanse of land that stretched as far as her eyes could see. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the scents of earth, hay, and fresh rain. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the connection between herself and the land. This ranch was more than a property or a legacy. It was a living, breathing entity, and she was now a part of it. She had learned its rhythms, understood its needs, and earned the respect of those who worked on it. She was no longer the widow uncertain about her place in the world. She was a leader, a caretaker, and a part of something larger than herself. When she returned to the house, she found Tom already preparing a simple dinner. They ate together, discussing the day's accomplishments and planning for the week ahead. The conversation flowed easily, filled with practical details, mutual respect, and a shared understanding that they were partners in running the ranch. There was a warmth between them now, born of trust, cooperation, and the challenges they had faced together. After dinner, Clara walked out to the porch, gazing at the stars in the clear night sky. She thought back to the first days at the ranch, the fear, the uncertainty, the exhaustion. She remembered how small and fragile she had felt when she first arrived, unsure if she could handle the demands of this new life. Now she felt strong, capable, and confident. She had grown in ways she hadn't imagined, discovering reserves of courage, patience, and resilience she didn't know she possessed. The ranch had taught her lessons that went far beyond work. She had learned the value of perseverance, the importance of observing before acting, and the power of working together. She had discovered that leadership was not about force or control, but about understanding, guiding, and inspiring those around you. Clara knew that challenges would continue to arise. Storms, illness, and unexpected difficulties were part of ranch life, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the worst the ranch could throw at her and had not faltered. I had faced the storm, managed the animals, guided the workers, and made decisions that mattered. She had proven to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. As she finally went to bed, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The grief of losing her husband was still there, but it no longer defined her person. She had found a new purpose, a new life, and a place where she belonged. The ranch was not just a legacy she had inherited. It was a home she had earned, a life she had built through courage, hard work, and determination. The days ahead would bring more work, more challenges, and more lessons. But Clara was ready. She had proven to herself that she could handle the demands of ranch life, and she had earned the respect and trust of Tom and the ranch hands. She had grown from a hesitant, lonely widow into a confident, capable woman, ready to face whatever came next. In that moment, looking out over the land bathed in moonlight, Clara realized that she was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. She had embraced her new beginning, and she knew that the ranch, with all its beauty and challenges, would continue to shape her, strengthen her, and guide her on this journey of growth and self-discovery. Tomorrow she would rise with the sun, ready to face the work ahead. But tonight, she allowed herself to rest, content in the knowledge that she had earned her place, proven her strength, and found a new beginning that was hers to claim. The ranch was alive, and so was she. And together, they would continue to grow, endure, and thrive.